Hi, I'm David Barr Kirtley, author of the book Save Me Please and Other Stories, which is available now on Amazon.com. We had a great conversation about the book back in episode 500, so definitely check that out if you missed it. And I want to give a special thank you to Nicholas Rogers, who just gave the book a 5-star review on Amazon.com. It says, "Excellent collection. Some of my favorite short stories from the last few years, from one of my favorite creatives working in the industry today. Every story in this collection is worth the price of admission individually. The collection altogether is an absolute goldmine. Safest purchase you'll make all year." So big thanks again to Nicholas Rogers for that great review. Alright, so now let's get to our show.
Wired.com presents The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. And here is your host, David Barr Kirtley.
Hello, and welcome to episode 515 of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. Today on the show we'll be discussing Frank Herbert's Dune, a Sci-Fi Channel miniseries that was originally released in December 2000. And this will include spoilers for everything in the show, so just be aware of that. And we previously discussed the Dune novel back in episode 417, the 1984 Dune movie back in episode 432, and the 2021 Dune movie back in episode 491, so definitely check those out if you missed them. And I'm joined by 3 guests. So first up we've got Andrea Kale, making her 26th appearance on the show. She's a graduate of the Odyssey Writers Workshop, and her short fiction appears in the Writers of the Future anthology, Fantasy Magazine, and Lightspeed. She's been a television writer, producer, and script supervisor for shows such as Late Night with Conan O'Brien, The Chew, and WWE's Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown, and she's currently shopping her reality show The Night. So Andrea, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back, Dave.
Then next up we've got Matthew Kressel, also making his 26th appearance on the show. His short story Now We Paint Worlds was just published on Tor.com, and the trade paperback and ebook versions of Queen of Static, the follow-up to his groundbreaking novel King of Shards, are available now. Together with Ellen Datlow, he hosts the monthly Fantastic Fiction reading series at the KGB Bar in New York. So Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. Good to be back.
And also joining us today is Rajan Khanna, making his 21st appearance on the show. He's the author of the post-apocalyptic novels Falling Sky, Rising Tide, and Raining Fire, and his short fiction appears in magazines such as Analog, Lightspeed, and Beneath Ceaseless Skies. His articles have appeared on Tor.com and LitReactor.com. So Raj, welcome to the show.
Always good to be back, thanks.
Okay, so let's start off with Andrea. So Andrea, had you ever seen this Sci-Fi Channel miniseries before?
I had. I saw it when it aired back in 2000, but that's the only time I'd ever seen it. I don't know that they must have played it again at some point, but I just never, that's the only time I ever saw it.
And what, do you remember what you thought of it back then?
I remember thinking this isn't very good, but it's passable. I have a very distinct memory of one specific shot where Jessica and Paul are running away from the Thopters in front of, like running in place in front of a bad green screen. Like that is burned into my memory. And when I saw it again, it did not disappoint. So yeah, that's what I remember about it. And it pretty much held up. In fact, actually, it exceeded my memory of it being really terrible. But
you're saying it was better. It was better than you remembered.
No, it was worse than I remembered.
Okay.
Great. It exponentially
it exceeded
worse.
Your bad.
It exceeded the bad. It totally exceeded the bad.
Yeah, I mean, I had I watched this around the time it came out, and I watched just the first episode, and I was like, nope, and I didn't watch the rest of it. I think I finished the first episode. I may have watched a little bit of the second episode. I really just don't remember, but nothing about it really stuck with me at all. So I wasn't really that interested in watching it, but other people on the panel were enthusiastic to talk about it. And I promised Matt way back when that I would let him talk about the sandworm battle. So I felt like we should do that.
Did?
Oh yeah. Go back and listen to, I think it's the novel panel we did.
Hold on, I'll go back.
Yeah. Because you were like, I want to talk about the sandworm battle, and I was like, save it for our panel on the TV show. This isn't the time to talk about it.
I just want to say I did not advocate for this, so on record.
All right. Everyone's bailing out now.
I will take the blame here, and I think I was the one who was like, we need to do this. We need to watch this and talk about it. I'm pretty sure it was me.
I mean, I think for completeness, it's a good idea. I mean, we originally were planning to talk about it before the Denis Villeneuve movie came out, but it just, I don't know, it didn't happen to fit in the schedule. And I saw this is actually really hard to watch. It's not really streaming anywhere.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure how many people would have seen it or, would want to go, would be able to go see it. Actually, I just looked and now it's on YouTube. If you want to watch it, it's on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Perfect medium.
I don't think it was there earlier, but maybe I just missed it. But it's there now, so it's a lot easier to watch. But yeah, so that's sort of the story. So, but Matt, you don't remember the sandworm battle that you were so eager to talk about?
I mean, I get very excited talking about Dune. I probably said a lot of things. The sandworm battle
at the end. Well, okay. Well, we won't get. We'll save that. But just what did you remember? Did you watch? Because I guess you'd seen this, right? If you'd seen the sandworm stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if I saw it in 2000. It's possible that I did. Do you remember what month in 2000 this came out?
December.
Yeah. I definitely saw it. I think in 2003 when they released the sequel, Children of Dune, and I think they probably played them sequentially or something.
Probably. Yeah.
That may have been. I definitely saw it then. So, I remember feeling that at the time the special effects were cheesy, but liking it anyway. And I don't know if you want us to get into our thoughts on it just yet, but
no, let's get Raj too.
Okay.
Just right. Raj, had you seen this before?
Yeah, I mean, I remember. So I thought when I watched this that it happened in college, but it didn't. But I'd been talking about it with one of my good friends from college, because we had discussed me reading the book of Dune, and we had watched the Lynch movie together and talked about that. And so I remember it coming out, and I remember honestly Sci-Fi Channel being a big deal back in the day, because it was sort of like, this is before they had all these geek stuff everywhere. It was sort of like, this was for us in a way.
Yeah.
And that sort of 90s, early 2000s CGI thing wasn't quite as dated as it is now. But I remember watching it, and I remember thinking, oh yes, they've adhered more to the letter of the novel, which, theoretically I would have appreciated, but it felt bloodless to me. It felt like it had no real life to it. And on rewatching it, that's kind of how I felt again. Like, I feel like all the flaws you can level at the David Lynch movie, it has a lot of passion, at least for the, people working on it, and sort of energy in that movie, whether you feel like that's good or bad. And this one is sort of like dead. It feels like a dead fish in a lot of ways. I appreciate, a lot of what they tried to do, but I just think it's a hard thing. And I think it's also, I mean, I'm not blaming you, David, but I feel like it's a little cruel to like have to do this after we saw the, the recent movie, because that's arguably the gold standard now for Dune. And this was a 2000 TV miniseries with a budget of $20 million, and there's no, with the data, special effects and everything, there's no way it could even compare. And so in my brain, it was just always flatter than I think it might have been before. But yeah, sorry.
Well, I think one way in which this is an appropriate time to talk about this is that this, the Denis Villeneuve movie only covers the first half of the book.
Sure.
And this covers the whole book. So it's kind of interesting to, compare how this covers the first half of the book and then how it covers the second half of the book, and kind of imagine how will the Dune movie part 2 cover the same material, to sort of speculate about that, I think.
If I can just say really quickly, what's interesting about that is I was looking at the runtime, and I don't know the actual runtime of the version we watched, but like the director's cut is almost 5 hours, I guess. And his movies, I guess, are going to clock out around 5 hours, maybe a little more, maybe whatever, because the first one was at 2.5. So it's amazing to see what, because everyone says, oh, you can't do it in movies, TV is better, but like they're going to end up being around the same timing. And I feel like they did a much better job in the first film, at least, of pacing that. So.
Yeah, I didn't even realize there was a director's cut of this until just like this morning or something. I assume
a director's cut of the Villeneuve?
No, the miniseries.
Oh, I didn't know there was a. Wow.
Yeah, apparently.
I just wasn't.
I'm not putting myself through that again, though.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
2002, he released a director's cut, and it's longer. I don't know how much longer. I mean, this was 3 90-minute episodes, so like Raj is saying, this is going to be the thing we watched is almost as long as the Dune, almost as long as the 2 Dune movies together are going to be. They're about the same run times. But Raj, were you going to say something else about the director's cut, or?
No, I guess I only had some confusion as to which version I was watching because I was a little surprised by the nudity because I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't see this on Sci-Fi back when I was watching it. And so it was, that was the only thing I was like, am I watching the director's cut? Because there are breasts and, buttocks in it and things. So, that was interesting. Surprising.
Huh. That's a good. I had not thought about that. Yeah, maybe we did watch the director's cut. I'm not even sure.
Yeah, because I was a little surprised too. I was like, I can't remember seeing this on Sci-Fi in 2000. But then again, I could have blocked it all out.
But yeah. So, how do you guys think that this compares to the obviously the Denis Villeneuve is like Raj says is the gold standard. So what is the silver, in your opinion, Andrea? This or the Lynch?
I think this makes the Lynch version look like the Denis Villeneuve version, and the Villeneuve version makes and the Lynch version makes the Villeneuve version look like the a movie delivered by the hand of God. Like that's how much this popped everything up before it. It was so spectacularly terrible. And also like on every level, not just like the actual adaptation itself. Like I didn't have a problem with what they did. Like I appreciated it. And I remember we had this talk about how would have liked to see the banquet scene, the scene in the with all the plants. What was that called? Where she goes into the room with all the plants.
Yeah, I know what you're talking. I'm not sure what it was called.
So it was nice to see all that, but it was just so badly written. It wasn't even the writing; it was the acting. It was the special effects, the lighting, the sets. I'm sitting here watching it, making 10 million comparisons. One was like, this is like a 1975 BBC production of I Claudius, and then I'm like, this is one step up from Battlestar Galactica 1978. And then I'm like, Star Trek 1968 did better stuff than this. Like it was just so it was like watching a play being filmed. It wasn't a movie. It was a play that somebody pointed a camera at. There were actual lighting cues. Like what is? Ugh.
Well, let me say. I mean, I'll say a few good things about this. I mean, for one, I think part of the impetus for this was that the Lynch movie, as we discussed, completely eliminates the whole point of Dune, which is that Paul is on this sort of dark destiny, or this dark future that has to try to avoid or not. And the Lynch movie completely gets rid of that, as far as I remember, and just makes him basically into the Messiah hero.
Yeah.
And so this was, I think the idea was, let's try to stick closer to the books in this TV show. And this was like, at the time, this was back when the Sci-Fi Channel was fairly new. This was I think the first miniseries they did. Yeah, it was $20 million. So like, by the standards of the day, this was a big, big investment for them to make. And this won, what was it? It's like 2 Emmys for special effects or something. Wait, I have it here somewhere.
It's also one of the highest rated things they've ever put on the screen. Like they still to this day.
Yeah, so Frank Herbert's Dune won 2 Emmy Awards for Outstanding Cinematography and Outstanding Special Visual Effects, and was nominated for Outstanding Sounds Editing. So, I mean, that's just like totally baffling to me because, like Andrea was mentioning, the scene where they're running away from the the ornithopter is so like cheesy. But I guess back in 2000 for science fiction on television.
Well, I'm remember
skeptical.
It looked like I said. I'm sitting here the whole time. I'm making like comparisons, bad comparisons to like bad 80s sci-fi movies and everything. And as I said, I genuinely very sharply remember that one scene of the running in place in front of the green screen. Like it stuck in my head of like how did you think you could get away with that? But here's the other thing I was thinking as I was watching it was maybe, and it could be that it looks so much worse now because we're watching it like on HD or whatever format we're watching it in now. Television is so much better, and everything looks so much worse from the past. And I think all those, like the eyeball, their eyes, you can see the actual context in their eyes.
Yeah.
And I bet you, 20 years ago, when you're looking, you wouldn't see how with such detail that was a contact.
TV, yeah.
Yes.
Does that explain the costume choices too?
Oh, maybe. No, that's a whole other thing. Good Lord. What was with the triangles and the head? What the?
Come on. You didn't like the giant triangles behind their head?
Triangle, my God.
The Emperor's last outfit was ridiculous. Like what?
Oh, but all of the outfits. I think I took a note when I first saw him. He was wearing like that purple Mylar outfit. I'm like, he looks like he wandered off the set of Xanadu. Like, what, is he going to go skating and with Olivia Newton-John next? What is going on?
It's actually, okay, it's funny because I watched this making of documentary about this, and the director, I forget, I think they filmed it in like Prague or something like that. And there was some local like costume designer who was just a legend in the country. And the director said, hey, would you like to do the costumes for my Dune TV show? And this guy said, oh, I don't touch science fiction. I'm way too good for that. And the director says, no, it's not really science fiction. It's not going to be just like people in spandex, and he talked him into doing it. And then you look at the costumes for that, which, as you say, has the most like preposterous, outlandish costumes of like you could possibly imagine. It's just...
Although I like Princess Irulan's wardrobe.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I felt that, that they did a good job with that. And, the special effects, like there were some places where it was like they just literally, like they didn't even do a matte painting. They just had like a backdrop that they unrolled.
Like a scrim.
Yes.
A scrim.
It's like it's like a theater.
Like theater.
They're flats.
It was flat, and
flats.
I was like, that's an odd choice because maybe they didn't have the money for a matte painting, but certainly they had green screens by this point. Like I was just very curious at that, or at least like light it better so that you can't really tell what's going on in the background.
Yeah, the lighting was awful.
That was odd, but I did like part of the Emperor's Palace, and I thought that the Fremen. The Sieches. I thought that the way they designed the Sieches and Arakeen, like the streets of Arakeen, some of that stuff actually I thought worked for the time, and I think we're spoiled by the special effects today. It's so good, it's just everything looks real, like it's flawless. But we kind of forget that was really, really hard to achieve. Even Star Wars that had this huge budget, you watch the original one, not the enhanced one, not the remastered, and it's like, yeah, that's clear. The Death Star is a model. You can just tell, like when they're on the close-up shot.
It still looks better, though.
Still looks better.
Star Wars still exceeds.
It does exceed. It does exceed.
Well,
there were a lot of questionable choices.
Yeah,
and I think one of the issues is that they didn't have like a good aesthetic. Like you can again ding the Lynch movie, but they had an aesthetic, an idea, a point of view on what they wanted to portray. The same with the Villeneuve movie. So, but this one sort of seemed a little bit loose and all over the place and some of the stuff seemed really like similar to what Lynch had done in some ways. And
I think I wrote that note. I was like, those look similar to
the Guild the Guild Navigator.
Yes, the Guild Navigators. Yeah.
By the way, the other Guild people, like what was that weird acting choice? Was like where he was doing the hand motions and stuff. I hated it.
I had to pause to laugh.
It was crazy.
That last scene, The last scene where he goes,
Yeah.
"You do not give orders to us." And then they cut to Paul, and he's surrounded by his mother and Cheney, and then the little girl Ollie is sitting at his feet, and they're all straight faced, and you're looking at the little girl, and she's laughing her ass off. And I don't know if it's because that's what they told her the character should be doing, or if she's just a little girl laughing at the crazy guy making hand gestures. That's how
are we calling her Cheney now? Because it's always been Chani before.
That's
think,
what
right?
I always thought. Chani. They're calling her Cheney. I don't know. I don't give a shit.
They actually used I think it's the pronunciation that Herbert.
He said Cheney. Oh, wow.
Cheney and Harkonnen.
Harkonnen I got, but yeah. Go ahead, David. Sorry.
Oh, well, yeah, that we were commenting that Harkonnen was not what we expected in the Villeneuve movie, but this is the same thing. So yeah, that must be Herbert's preferred pronunciation, I guess. I mean, I'll agree with Matt though about I did think the Emperor's Palace stuff, the sets were good for that, and like the Sieges, the Fremen caves and stuff. I thought, for what they had to work with, I thought were pretty good. I mean,
I thought some of the acting was pretty terrible, but I also thought some of it was good. Like,
sure.
I'll just go off really quickly who I thought was bad. William Hurt, like what? Like I don't know what people see in William Hurt. Sorry, William, if you're listening to this. I don't get
Isn't
it.
he dead now?
Yeah, he just
died.
He's
dead now.
Oh, all right. Sorry, I don't mean to speak ill of the dead. He's a low talker. He just like mumbles his lines, and I'm like, is this
low energy? It's low energy.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. I remember at the time being really upset that William Hurt was cast.
But he's always kind of like that. But in this, he seems like he was drugged. I mean, it was a really, really bizarre performance, I thought.
Yeah.
Like he was on he seems like he was on tranquilizers or something.
Yeah. But I mean, as far as like acting that I did like, I liked the woman who played Lady Jessica, Saskia Reeves. I thought she was a great. Yeah, I liked her a lot.
Oh God.
And Ian McNeice as the Baron.
He was good.
It's because he's playing it for laughs. That was my that's how I halfway through it. I'm like, he's just like, fuck it, I'm playing this for laughs.
But I agree with Matt. I thought the Baron was good, and I didn't like the way that Jessica was written at all. But I thought the actress did a good job.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's fair. I think that the way that they wrote Jessica. I mean, that's my biggest issue is somehow the way that they wrote some of these characters. I mean, some of the casting I think was off, but like Paul and Jessica being two of the most important characters, I was like, oh Jesus Christ. I mean, Paul mostly just in the first episode because they just made him an idiot, and I think
an asshole. I wanted to smack him.
He's a spoiled brat.
I think it was mostly to facilitate exposition. So he'd be like, oh, what's going on over there? And like, why do I have to do this? And people would be like, well, Paul, this is why, but it just made him seem terrible. And then by the end of it, I was like, oh, this guy can like pull off the kind of aggressive, fatalistic Paul in a way, but like that first one, I think it's partially because they were trying to make him give him the arc of like coming around to it. But in the books, he's been trained, like he's a well-trained aristocrat's son. So
yeah.
Well, no, they never give you any reason to like any of the main characters at the beginning, which is like such a huge mistake. You have to give us some. Paul can't just be a whiny teenager, and Leto can't just be a drugged, weird, passive guy. And
I felt like William Hurt was doing he was like pushed into doing a high school Shakespeare play, and like he was just like, okay, I'm gonna do it, and that's basically the same performance that he gave in this thing. So
So Andrea, what did you think? Because you even had issues with Lady Jessica in the Villeneuve version.
I did. I've yet to see her really portrayed the way she is in my head, but but yeah, I didn't. The woman, there's really the guy who played the Baron. That was fun, but specifically because he made me laugh. I trying to think of anybody else who wasn't terrible, and I can't come up with anything. But I think you hit it on the nail on the head where your two main characters, Paul and Jessica, are, well, she's fine. I mean, there's just nothing. I don't know that she had a lot to work with, but Paul just playing him like a whiny little bitch. This is your main character. I have no reason to like him. And when you compare it to, Timothée Chalamet, who's a mopey teenager, which everybody gets, but you understand him. You remember how you were at that age and you get it. But he's not awful. Like, this Paul is awful. Like, I want to slap him every time he opens his mouth.
Yeah, well, and I was saying when we discussed the 2021 movie, there's just that scene between Paul and Leto where Leto says, all the future, you're the future of this house, you'll always be my son. And I was just like getting so emotional at that. And there's just absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
No connection, emotional connection with these characters here.
Yeah. And they don't have connections with each other. Like, there's no, I don't feel that father-son love between Paul and Leto at all. How many scenes do they share,
I think that's part of why I think it's bloodless. I feel like there's no chemistry between any of these people, like not between Paul and Chani, not between Paul and his father, even with Duncan and what's his name, Gurney, like I don't feel like they have a relationship, whereas I did in the other versions of this. So
yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. So I'm trying to think, like, who was the best actor I'm trying to like Stilgar maybe. I don't know.
No, my vote's for the Baron, and also
maybe.
I enjoyed the guy playing Fade. I thought he was funny.
Really.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's like a great performance. It's just because the way he played it was just funny. Like, him and the Baron playing off each other was funny. But that wasn't the point of all the scenes. So,
well, okay, let's talk about some of the changes that they made, because they added a bunch of scenes involving the Harkonnens and the House Karina, the Emperor and Princess Irulan and stuff. Like, Princess Irulan, actually, I actually liked her a lot.
You know what? You're right. Exactly. You know what? Exactly.
Julie
right.
Cox.
Yeah.
She was actually probably my favorite part of this adaptation. Yeah. But so Andrea, you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that. I thought it was interesting to bring her into the story, that she, in the book, all she is the narrator. Or at least she opens up each chapter with her diary or whatever she's writing, the histories. So making her an active character, I thought, was a really good idea. And she's good, She sells it to me. Yeah,
let me just explain. So in the Villeneuve movie, they cut her out entirely. Like, she doesn't appear in the part one at all. And so in this, and she doesn't, in the book, she doesn't really appear at all, except, as Andrea's saying, as kind of a narrator, in the future, explaining what this, as if the events of this book are history. And so in this, she gets this whole subplot where she's sort of scheming and traveling to the Harkonnens to figure out what they're up to. And she goes and meets Paul at one point on Arrakis. And so actually, I've said that, Dune, it's kind of a combination of like a space opera, court intrigue, and then like hippie Lawrence of Arabia. Those are sort of two. And I like the space opera, court intrigue stuff significantly more. So the fact that so her storyline kind of like continued the space opera, court intrigue stuff through the whole story. So I actually really liked that a lot. So how about Matt? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I read in a review of the series that the writer inserted Irulan's character into the narrative as a way to prevent the characters from having these long exposition scenes. And I liked her. I thought that she was smart, clever, and it goes along with Herbert's theme of Dune's theme of like plans within plans within plans, and like she's plotting while the Emperor, her father's plotting, and then the Bene Gesserit are plotting, and I like that they weave that narrative in there, and I think that in the book the Bene Gesserit send one of the sisters to speak with Fade. And in this case, she goes to speak with Fade to get information. And it's so obvious why she's there. But it worked. I like characters that are that have agency, that are doing things to get answers. And I loved her. I loved her character. I loved her costumes. She worked for me.
Yeah.
How about Raj? What did you think about the changes that they made to the story?
I thought it was fine. I mean, I think, it sort of feels like one of those things where, like, as we talked before, I think you only have really one female character of note in all the whole thing. So, of course, making another one who is in the book and, like, just fleshing it out just felt like a natural thing to do. And I do think it ties in more with the overall, like you said, the intrigue part of the story, and it helps explain that whole thing about what the Emperor's doing. And she's sort of a audience representative in the sense that she kind of knows that it's all kind of fucked up and terrible, and sees what her father is doing, and sort of is rooting for Paul all along, or at least that's what I took away from it. So I didn't mind that much. I didn't mind that so much, and that was probably the biggest change, right?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Actually, that reminds me, I really liked the part where, so they did include in this the banquet scene that we all liked so much from the novel. I mean, it's pretty truncated here, but in that, there's this part where, Irulan and Paul, like, he does something, he's like dancing or something. It's a little weird, but then
he's pretending to be the Baron, I think.
Okay. But then they have a conversation, and then, like, her Sardaukar guards come over, and there's his Atreides guards, and they kind of have this, like, standoff for a moment there. And I thought that was all really good, and it sort of, like, foreshadows the conflict and shows the tensions and stuff.
Yeah, I really like that scene too, especially when she tries to convince Paul that they're the same, but he suspects that there's some deception there. And the truth is that they are both, products of breeding and fate, and have this terrible history in front of them that neither of them can control. And then immediately after that, like you said, Dave, like their two forces meet face to face, and it was foreshadowing what's to come. I thought that was a great scene. I kind of wish there was more of that gravitas throughout the series, but we don't get too much of it.
Right, because we were saying, like, when we reviewed the 2021 movie, like, oh, this should have been a TV series, because there's so much stuff that we would like to see expanded, and we're like, well, where's the 4-hour long director's cut and stuff like that. And it seems like this that I'm like, man, if this was in I'd love to see the Denis Villeneuve treatment of this whole Princess Irulan storyline and everything.
Yeah.
I mean,
we're going to get more of that in the next film, right?
Yeah. They've cast Florence Pugh.
Oh, really? And Shaddam, they cast Shaddam as well, right? Like, I can't remember who it is. I don't remember.
It's Christopher Walken.
Oh, that's right, Walken. Yeah. Oh
my
so
God,
good.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I'm the emperor of the known universe.
Oh God, I will pay money.
Walken's amazing.
Will absolutely
Walken's
pay money to see it.
I'm watching him in Severance, and he's so good.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, no, I think that's cool. I'll just mention the other casting they announced. Wait, I have it here. So I didn't actually know the actor, but the
Austin Butler,
Fade Routha. Yeah,
I know him.
Do you know him?
I do know him.
Because he was in the Shannara show, but I never watched that.
Yeah, I watched that, and it's terrible. Yeah, he's one of those guys. Like I saw him in Shannara, and I saw him in he had a very short role in Arrow, one season of Arrow, and he's one of those people that I don't like for no particular reason. Like, I just hate his face. Like, I don't know if, like, I have no explanation for it. Like, he's done nothing. I'm sure he's a lovely person, but I just don't like him. So I think casting him as Fade actually works really well for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, because that's, you're supposed to hate him. Yeah.
Oh, he's the guy who's playing Elvis in the Baz Luhrmann movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just say Florence Pugh if anyone doesn't know who that is. I mean, I know her. She was the main character in Midsummer, the Ari Aster horror, like Scandinavian horror movie. She was also, I guess, Scarlett Johansson's sister in Black Widow. I never saw that, but
yeah, she's very good. She's very
great.
Good.
She was really good in Midsummer for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, let's. So I have a little list of some of the other changes. So like Raj is saying, the the Irulan subplot was definitely the biggest change, and otherwise this is pretty faithful to the books, I guess. I guess before I get into all my changes, does anyone disagree?
Yeah, I think it's faithful. They pull some stuff, I think, from later books into this one as well. But yeah, I'd say it's almost too faithful.
Yeah, so nobody thought this was like a travesty in terms of how they changed the story or anything like
that?
No,
not at all.
Mm-mm.
No.
So they changed around the hunter seeker scene a little bit.
Yes,
yeah, I didn't like that.
Yeah, yes. It was pointless, too. There was no reason for it.
I think I know the reason. I think they needed Paul to be able to explain to somebody else what was happening, like don't move or it'll find you. Like, so it had to go for her first, but then it completely undercut the idea that it was trying to kill him in the first place. And then he yells at Shut Out Mapes for walking in.
Yes.
Like, you almost got yourself killed. She just walked in the door, dude. Like, what the hell?
How dare you change my linen?
Well, so let me just explain. So in the book, and in the previous film adaptations, as far as I remember, Paul is just in the room by himself, and this little like flying drone thing comes out of the wall to kill him. And in this, they change it so that there's this other servant in the room with him. So he's, I think it's exactly what Raj says, is that they just thought it would be better to have him explain to someone about how it seeks motion and stuff. I didn't think that was too bad an idea, but Andrea, you didn't like that?
No, I didn't, because I see that, exposition, okay, fine, but filmmaking is a visual medium. You don't have to have people explain everything. And I think if you see a thing coming out of a wall with a needle coming at you, you kind of get the feeling that somebody's going to get hurt. But whatever. But the whole time he's talking to her, first of all, his lips are moving. So if it's going to be attracted to movement, it's going to be attracted to that. And she's also cringing and blinking as the thing's right in front of her. So she would be dead. So it was just, I don't know.
It's also a very bright room. I mean, how bad are these cameras? Like, that's not a person. That's just.
Well, but it's like, I mean, I don't know, this really makes sense anyway, but that is from the book, right? That this thing, it's like a T-Rex or something. It can only see motion somehow for some reason.
Yeah, it's just automated. No, actually, no, there was a control.
No, there's an operator. There's an operator.
Nearby. Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah.
Because there's no AI in this world.
Originally. In the
book, it was a dim room, though.
Yeah, it was at night, because he wakes up like he was asleep.
Like in the Lynch movie, they have Paul going, "Hunter Seeker is attracted to movement," in his head, like, because they have so much internal monologue. But I feel like the most recent film handles it perfectly, and it's fine. It's clear what's going on. It goes right in front of his eye. It's really tense. It's really cool. Yeah.
It's
and he kind of, I just rewatched that, and it's cool because he kind of steps inside the hologram thing to kind of camouflage himself.
Yeah, it's cool.
And then the other thing is that then in a later scene, the Baron and Fade, I think, are talking about how Raban kind of went off the reservation to do this hunter-seeker thing.
Yeah.
Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't remember that from other versions.
No.
So I think that my impression is that they invented that detail for this TV show.
Yeah.
I think that works fine.
Well, I think it's probably like let's build tension here. Raban's a moron and blah, blah, blah.
And they have the Baron say that, like, he wants them to get complacent so that they're not on guard. So he doesn't want to challenge them. So in that case, you have to show that it, wasn't his idea, I guess. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually thought that seemed pretty good to me. I mean, so just to explain if anyone is fuzzy on the details. So the Baron has these two nephews, Fade, who's really handsome and charming, and Raban, who's just really brutal and sort of dim-witted. And his plan is to have Raban subjugate the local population brutally, and then he's going to have him killed and replaced with Fade. So they create a bunch more scenes than are in the book or or the previous films, to kind of like create more of a through line there, which I actually thought worked pretty well. So yeah, I don't know, it seems good to me.
Yeah,
it was fun.
It's kind of hard to to pick out the good things about it because the bad things are so overwhelming that you just sit there just watching the bad stuff. Like I felt overwhelmed by the bad choices they've made that it's like, I was like, nobody was good. And then Dave, you were like, well, the woman playing Irulan, I'm like, oh yes, you're right. She was
right,
good.
all right.
Like you had to remind me.
The arboretum or the garden inside the Arrakeen Palace, it was like it looks like, when you go to the Home Depot section of plants, like it looked like they're just
it's
like
Mall of America.
They told a PA to like just get by all the plants, and they just stacked them on a table. I'm like come on, people, like couldn't you?
Yeah, but
like,
I feel like,
yeah.
like it's like panning for gold, like looking at this show, and I think we have to just look at like, okay, obviously the special effects look crappy and so on, but and the costumes and so on, but like what are the story choices that they made that sort of teach you how to that we can analyze as writers in terms of how do you adapt this book as a TV show.
I mean, I believe it's not until the second book or the third book that you learn this, that the fact that Jessica is Baron Harkonnen's daughter, and they bring that way up forward in this. But I think that's when that gets brought up, it makes perfect sense and it works. I think that it shows this genetic manipulation and how they're trying to kind of bring these bloodlines together, and they were even have her daughter marry the Harkonnen heir, so basically making those two stronger. And I think that being brought forward doesn't hurt anything and is actually a cool little element to bring in, especially because like Jessica is portrayed as, well, less in this one, she's more blonde, but usually with red hair, and so like that fits with the way that the Harkonnens usually are portrayed. So I think that was a choice that I was like fully in favor of and thought actually was like a decent choice. I mean, I don't know that I think you can get by without it, but I think it adds an element to this story that you wouldn't get for another couple books probably. So.
Yeah, I guess another thing I'll say for this adaptation is I feel like you get a lot more of the story somehow, even though it's the same amount of running time. But I guess maybe just because the action scenes are sort of shorter and not that good, but
not good at all.
Like a lot of I feel like you get a lot more of the world building and stuff. And like I'm thinking like another person I thought was actually really good was Liet Kynes.
I liked Liet.
And I feel like you get a lot more of him in this than in the Villeneuve. Because we were saying, like, in the Villeneuve version, Liet Kynes, it's just kind of like, oh, yeah, I want to turn the planet green. And that's just, like, really brief, sandwiched between a bunch of, like, chase scenes and stuff.
Yeah.
And here I thought there was a lot more room for the character to breathe and be developed.
I agree.
Yeah, when that guy showed up, I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And then I was like, oh, no, I like him. He's pretty cool. Like, he had a definite character to him, so...
Yeah, he had a sort of gravitas, I think, like that actor, yeah. So see, there was some good stuff. It wasn't a total waste of time watching this miniseries.
Well, I feel like, as we're talking, it's like I don't feel like the writing was the problem. It's everything else. Like it's the production values and the acting that really just kind of, because like I didn't have any problem with the storytelling. I think they, were fairly faithful to the book. Changes they made were respectful and made sense. It was just everything else was just yikes.
I feel like it falls prey to what Dune adaptations I think have to fall prey to because of the complexity of the book, is that you have to have so much exposition in there and you have to accomplish it a certain way. And like, you can have little data tapes running that say like Dune, desert planet, whatever. Or you have some people say, like there was one point where, like Paul says, do it in the emperor's name. And then there's like a comma and he says, shot him the fourth comma, and like keeps going on with this thing. But clearly that was so that they could tell us what the emperor's name was so that it can be referenced later. But like it felt clunky. And lot of things like that felt clunky. You know, a lot of the Paul asking stupid questions that he should know the answer to, or, you know, or Jessica even. Like, there was that point she's like, who's that water guy? And like, I'm used to Jessica being like, you know, I know exactly what's going on. I've studied this planet. You know, Bene Gesserit stuff goes deep. And so I think it suffered from a lot of having to shoehorn a lot of that stuff in. I was also disappointed that Usul was not included in this. You know, they just relied on the old Muad'Dib.
Yeah. I noticed that.
Well, I think it's interesting comparing this to the Villeneuve movie, because that basically doesn't explain. There's a lot of things where it's just like, Mentats, dude, don't worry about it. You know, the the guild navigators, like, don't worry about it, it's not important. It just focuses on telling a compelling emotional character story, and this tries to explain a lot more of the world's building, and that's really bad in a lot, you know, dramatically bad in a lot of ways. But I feel like if you watch this, you actually sort of know more about the worlds and what happens in the book than you would from watching the Villeneuve movie, which is, you know, like a million times better. But it's made this trade-off of like dramatic effectiveness versus world building. Well, that's why I said
it felt like a play, because everybody's talking all the time.
Yeah,
there's no visual. It's ceased to be a visual medium. You know, it was just talking, and you know, that's not a movie.
Andrea, there was a diaper fight in there at one point, so.
Oh, the diaper fight. That's right. I think I made a note when I saw it. I was like, finally, we get the loincloths. I was very happy about that.
I guess that's another thing that bugged me, though, is that they, again, just like the Lynch movie, everyone's using guns, and they're, you know, like, they established that there's the shields and that there's the slow knives and stuff, but then that gets completely forgotten, and now suddenly everyone's using, like, rifles and grenades and all this stuff.
I was bugged that they set up the still suit. I thought the still suit design was the worst one out of all of them, but then they just stop wearing them at a certain point, and it's sort of pajamas. like what the, you know, the whole idea is that this planet is so hostile that you have to like watch every loss of water, and then they're just walking around in regular clothes outside at one point in time, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, I get that, and they've done this in both movies too, that you don't want to cover people's faces too much, because how are they going to emote? And, you know, that's the reason why we cast these actors in this thing. So I can get around that part. But, like, you know, at least in the other two movies, they wear those still suits pretty much every time you see them outside. So, yeah.
I guess, Matt, is there anything else? I want to get Matt back in here. Matt, is there anything else you've been wanting to say?
You know, I know we were talking a little bit about the pacing of this, and some of you said it felt a little slow and kind of, you know, missing in points. But there was something about the pacing of it that I actually liked. I mean, I love the Villeneuve movie, of course, but it's a very frenetic film. And of course, you know, we haven't seen the whole thing yet, right? We've just seen the first half. But I feel like there was something about this series that took its time telling the story, and I respected that. And yeah, like, the acting faltered at points, many points. The special effects, like, sometimes the backdrop, I was like, this is like the worst sound stage. Like, Star Trek 60s had better stages than this. But you know, there's a saying that, you know, among writers, the story is everything, right? And the story carried me through beyond all of that. And I think it's just speaks to how compelling Dune is as a narrative, that, you know, I personally overlooked most of those flaws. It doesn't matter, like, you know, whether it's Lynch's Dune, this version of Dune, or Jodorowsky, well, that's crazy batshit. That's not Dune. Villeneuve. It just, I get sucked in. I get sucked into the story, and I'm just invested, and I'm there. So maybe I'm overlooking the flaws because I'm so invested in that story, and I love that story so much. But yeah, I just appreciated the pacing that.
Yeah, well, I think, like Andrea was saying about how it seems more like a play. I mean, I think there's definitely an extent to which this is sort of an artifact from a completely different era in geek culture, where you had to use your imagination more. Like, you know, anyone can watch the Villeneuve movie and like it because it's just so cool, you know. But like, you know, if you're not a science fiction fan, you start watching this Sci-Fi Channel thing, you're like, fuck no, I'm not watching this. You know, it's like, it's you know, in order to sort of get at what's good about it, you have to be able to look past a lot of the things that are bad about it. And there's just sort of, it's just interesting to note the big change in geek media that's happened with the special effects getting so much better.
But I also think that the geek culture has gotten cool since 2000, or at least much cooler. You know, I used to be odd man out in everywhere I worked, and now, you know, like, oh, what are you reading that for? And then, you know, a couple of years ago, oh, I know all of George R. R. Martin's books, and I'm like, good Lord, you know, fucking dilettantes.
Right, but a lot of that I think is the special effects not being like actively off-putting to most people, you know.
Yeah, but I also think there's the cool factor of like even a well-made science fiction movie would still get people to go, you know, oh, I don't watch that science fiction, so I don't, you know, that fantasy stuff. I don't. I think it's just gotten more acceptable for us to be out in the world now.
Out of our basement, out of our parents'
out
basements.
Of the basement, yeah.
I guess another thing I wanted to mention is that I think that this adaptation struggled with is so Paul, so like Raj was saying, like Paul starts off as this really whiny, annoying teenager, and then by the end of the miniseries, he's become this sort of stoic, you know, sort of ethereal, almost prophet warrior character. And so to make that transition, they have this like montage where, you know, he joins the Fremen, and then there's like this montage of them like doing desert raids and stuff. And I feel like this sort of like big sweep of time is something that a novel handles really naturally, and that film really, really struggles to convey. So that's one thing I'm a little nervous now, having seen this, and you know, and the Lynch movie as well. Like, how is Denis Villeneuve going to handle that? That period where Paul learns to be a Fremen basically without it seeming kind of cheesy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
A good point.
Sorry. No, I at one point,
same thing.
At one point they mentioned the child, and I was like, oh God, they already had their child already, like Leto, little young Leto, poor young Leto. But I was like, I didn't realize that much time had passed, so they didn't really convey it to me well enough. Yeah.
I mean, I half wonder if, I mean, since there's going to be 2 movies for Villeneuve, if the second one could pick up like a year later or 2 years later or something.
But they have to do the Water of Life stuff first, which happens way before, like, or at least, you know, I mean, by the way, one of the things I absolutely love about this, and I think I love in every incarnation, is Alia. Like, I cannot get enough of little creepy kid telling the Baron that he's going to die or whatever, the Gom Jabbar. Like, I love all of that. Like, I can't get enough. So she worked for me in this one. And of course, you know, I loved her in the Lynch movie as well. So
I also really like the scene where Jessica takes the Water of Life, and you know, you sort of see that vortex that she can't visit. I
hated that. I hated that. Yeah. But that's okay. We can disagree.
It was so 80s.
It was so 80s, but I loved it.
Everything just
I kept waiting to hear synth music.
Everything felt too like, oh, look, now she's in this like realm, and there was no art to it. There's no like, like almost the impressionist version of that, where it's like less literal and more, you know, simulated, but you know, whatever, it's fine.
Well, I mean, I think it would be very hard visually to convey sort of the histories of minds that she's seeing, and
I think
you vortex of reality. You
could do a montage easily, and I think that would convey the idea. But again, I think they wanted to have a person show up and say like, "Oh, now you're connected to me and everyone through me in the past," and then also say, "Oh God, you're pregnant. What the hell did you just do?"
Yeah,
and that way communicate it to the audience in a way, you know, like I'm going to give them credit for being like, okay, we don't want to just have somebody just drop a whole bunch of exposition, so we're going to try to do it more naturally through dialogue, but it involved bringing a lot of people on to say all these things, which felt a little clunky to me, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes, so you don't think there's any way they have to pick up basically immediately after the first movie ended for the Villeneuve? You don't think there's any way they could skip ahead at all?
You would have to do so many flashbacks. You would have to do a lot of flashbacks.
But I mean, that is an interesting idea. You could pick up with him sort of being established, and then you could even pick up with him and have Alia there, and then like sort of, you know, flashback to the whole water of life thing, because I feel like starting off with this creepy little blue-eyed, you know, super child would be kind of awesome, and then people were like, what the hell's going on? And then the flashback to the water of life. Is there anything else you would really need to cover there?
Is there any reason why it would have to be a flashback rather than just making that happen later, like just jiggling the chronology around to have it happen later in the sequence of events?
Because she needs to be at least like, what, how old is she, like 6 or 7 at least in those scenes?
Oh, you're saying because she's pregnant, because Jessica so she's pregnant with that's right,
But I think that's an interesting thing, because they chose to end it where we saw it, and there is a gap because Alia has to be a certain age at some point. So I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of started up after that gap and then filled in some of the blanks, because all you really need...
Could you maybe like do the Water of Life thing as sort of a like a teaser or whatever, and then have like the title sequence or whatever, and then we've jumped ahead to when Alia's a little kid, and then we pick up from there.
Also, they have a bit of a cheat because Paul can see, you know, after a certain point, can see all of time basically. So like, you know, and we already saw him see the future and sort of overwrite bits of the present in the first film, so they could play with that a lot too as well.
But doesn't he have to take the Water of Life to get to like be able to control it? He doesn't really control it.
But what I'm saying is, once if you start off with him at, or like, I think they could play with it. Like if they start out with him at that point, sort of like, I don't know. It's probably difficult with modern audiences to you don't want to lose them as well. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Matt, any thoughts on that?
You know, I'd just be curious for this miniseries, like if someone came to this without knowing the books, without having read it, would they enjoy it? Would they understand it?
Yeah.
And I know that my enjoyment of it is entirely dependent on the fact that I know the story really well. Mm-hmm. And if I had come to it without it, would it make me want to know more, or would I just turn away in frustration? Like, what is this? What is this shit? I think it would make me want to know more. I think that there's just so many layers of story, of meaning. I mean, as far as like Villeneuve, the choices where the director would go, I don't know. You know, if you have an ellipses of time, like flashbacks are kind of tough to pull off, but I feel like Raj said, with Paul's ability to see through time, that could work. I don't have a particular feeling one way or the other, which would be better. I think possibly I might just want it to pick up right where it left off, but just because I want one long movie.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, David?
Yeah.
So, like, Matt, that was a good point, because, you know, we're all coming to this after not only reading the book, but seeing multiple versions. So we're sort of like bringing that knowledge into this viewing experience, which I am also curious to see if somebody was naive to everything and thrown into this. But that made me like, do you think any of you, having watched this, you know, so where they did explain what a mentat is, where they do explain what, you know, Suk doctor training is, and all of that kind of stuff, Bene Gesserits, but would you like, did that seem like cool and you want to know more about it? Because that was when I watched the Lynch movies, I was like, holy shit, that stuff is cool. That weird stain on their lips and that weird thing on his forehead. And what does that mean? And that like intrigued me. And in this version, I felt like it was just a kind of thing that they told you, and it didn't seem particularly interesting or cool or separate from anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a technique that, in all narrative art forms is that you can't stop. I mean, you could stop and explain everything, but I think it's more interesting, at least for me, when some things are left a little mysterious, and maybe you explain some things, but you just sort of put these little grace notes throughout that hint of a much wider universe, and that really like piques my imagination. And I think I mentioned on this podcast, like I saw the Lynch film before I read the book, and it just, I was just like, what is this? I need to know everything about this universe. This is the coolest thing ever.
I mean, one thing in this is that, like, obviously it's hard for me to say since I do know all the backstory and everything now, but like, as I was watching this, like, I can't imagine how someone coming to this fresh could possibly have any idea what the weirding way is. Like, I felt like they never explained that.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
So for all the things
No, I was just saying, I actually have a note in here that I wrote when I was watching this, is like, does anybody who doesn't know the story, they can understand what's going on? I generally have no, perspective anymore. I don't think any of us have, really.
Yeah. I guess another thing, like another change I thought was really bizarre, and I don't know if I just if I slept through this or whatever, but when Paul and Jessica are taken out to the desert to die, she doesn't use the voice on the guards. They just
I think they skip that whole scene
over
that.
thing. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite scenes too. So
yeah.
It just seems like a really bizarre choice to skip that, since it's one of the cooler parts of the book. And also, like, they established, then it makes all the scenes where they establish the voice kind of pointless, because then it never really plays any role in this story.
And it shows his ability to do it, starting to bloom. Like, the first time you see him successfully be able to use the voice.
Yeah, I feel like in this version, they just use the voice. It's kind of like a double exclamation point.
Yeah.
It doesn't really do anything.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, David, you talked about them dropping the shield stuff and whatever. And it made me think of, he's fighting Gurney in that first scene. And he just kind of like, I'm done. And he walks away. And I felt like that was the miniseries being like, yeah, we're not going to do any more of this stuff. That was just our little nod to it in the book. Because there's a whole big scene about that too. They did do the slow blade penetrates, but it was sort of like didn't land the same way. Like, to me, that's a like key iconic scene. And in both of the film versions, it hits for me, in different ways. But like, it's almost like they did some of these things, but it was sort of like, instead of dramatizing them, they're just like, okay, check that box, let's move on to the next thing. And it has I just feel like it has no life to it in those moments.
Well, I feel like they thought they had time, and also everything is so dependent on the exposition and the dialogue that everything, it's so jumbled that you just miss important parts. Like when it's more of a film and you're telling visual stories, then whenever somebody says something, that it's important, and everything is lost here because everything is spoken out loud. Everything is explained.
Even Fear is the mind killer.
Nobody has to infer anything.
Yeah, if Fear is the mind killer, like, falls flat. He says it a couple times, but never the whole thing all the way through. And it just feels like it gets muddied in this sort of like stream of stuff they're putting into it. Whereas I feel like in the films, it's like it comes in at a certain moment and it kind of is a mantra, and it didn't even feel like a mantra in this version. So,
all right. Can you guys? I just wrote this down. I didn't really know what to make of this. I don't remember this from the book, but so there's this scene where the the head of the Spacing Guild is talking to the head of the Bene Gesserit, and he says, "The navigators are concerned. They are disturbed about the future. There's a problem on the horizon. They are troubled by a nexus they can't fully explore, an intersection of events, a meeting of countless delicate decisions beyond which lies a path beyond which they cannot see. It is not a matter of feuding royal houses. We sense a higher order interfering." And maybe, I don't know if anyone remembers this stuff from the book.
Yeah.
Okay, so the guild navigators can kind of see the future. I mean, I know they take the spice so they can see enough into the future to navigate through space, but I didn't realize that they were also sort of like prophets, or that they could see the course of future events or something.
Yeah, I think that definitely happens in the book.
Yeah, I think they have prescience too.
But they're limited again. Paul's the only one who doesn't have any, bumpers on his whole abilities, so.
Okay, and this thing about we sense a higher order interfering?
That feels odd to me.
What is that?
Yeah, that wording feels a little odd, but definitely that idea is there. I don't know. You guys might know better than I do.
That sounds very godlike. That infers God, and there's I think
they were trying to infer that was
Paul, right?
Paul and his effects.
But it sounds like God. Then again,
I didn't take it that way when I watched it, but yeah, I guess it could be taken that way. But
I mean, it actually, I had sort of forgotten about this, but I do remember when we talked about was it the novel? There was this part in the appendix about how the Bene Gesserit had sort of, seeded all the worlds with this fake prophecy.
Yeah.
But then there's this note where it says, but given how events turned out, maybe they thought it was a fake prophecy, but they were actually acting at the direction of a higher power. So it's something to that effect. So
I remember that too. There's also a YouTube podcast called Quinn's Ideas, and the guy talks often about Dune. And yeah, that was one of the theories that was expanded, of course, in the later books that weren't written by Frank, written by his son, but that there was it was the worms themselves or something that were trying to spread throughout the galaxy. I don't know. It seemed like there was more forces at play than we could comprehend, and whenever you think you understand, who's behind this particular force, there's another even greater force, a plan within a plan within a plan. I don't know. I found it fascinating to think about.
Well, because I mean, they the same. I think the same director who made this, at least the Sci-Fi Channel, went on to make Children of Dune, which covers books 2 and 3. So I get the feeling that some of the stuff in this was maybe trying to set up. I think that's part of the reason that Princess Irulan got such a big arc in this, was because she's a character in the next, in the next series, and so they wanted to set her up from the early on. And so I have not seen Children of Dune, and I haven't read books 2 or 3. And I don't know if I'll ever have time to do this, but I would kind of want to read books 2 and 3 before I watch the Children of Dune thing. But I don't know if has anyone seen Children of Dune?
I have, yeah.
I have, yeah. When it came out, and I started watching it now because I thought we were going to review it for this podcast.
As I recall, I haven't watched it again, but as I recall, it's much better than this version.
And it has James McAvoy in it, right?
Has James McAvoy as Leto, yeah. And I think they recast Jessica with Susan Sarandon.
No, Susan Sarandon plays Irulan's sister.
Oh, okay.
Sister?
But they did recast Jessica.
Oh, that's what I thought so.
As I forgot who played. It's the one who played the Borg Queen from the film.
Yes. I can't remember her name. Alice something? Alice Krieger? No.
Alice, yes.
Is that right?
Alice Krieg. Alice Krieg.
Yeah, and Ollie is all grown up, or at least early 20s or something.
Yeah. The acting is much better. James McAvoy is very good, as I recall.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the actors the same? I mean, almost everyone's dead.
Alec Newman plays Paul again, and he sort of comes back as this itinerant blind preacher, and he's. I mean, I only saw I think one episode, and he was good. I thought he was good.
All right, cool. So we're pretty much out of time. Does anyone have anything else they wanted to talk about before we start wrapping this up?
I just want to know if anybody else noticed that the explosion scenes, they use the same shot over and over again.
Oh, I didn't see that.
The big explosion and a guy flying through the air. I caught it at least 4 times.
I found the action scenes
like those 80s
boring.
cartoons.
Exactly, like an 80s movie. Yeah, like a guy, there's a big boom and then a guy flies through like he just bounced off a trampoline. It's awesome.
I think the only time I was excited by the action was at the final knife duel where like they give Paul that special effect where he kind of like wavers and moves really quick. I guess because of his mental abilities. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Because up until then I was just like, eh.
That was really well choreographed, by the way, that last fight scene.
Yeah, that was better, I thought.
I thought that was the weirding way, just in general, that's what they were trying to convey there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So I have a question. Does anyone know anything about the Sisterhood, the Bene Gesserit series? Has that been greenlit? And do we have a...
the latest thing I could see is it says HBO Max is also planning to do a spin-off series, Dune the Sisterhood, which Diane Ademu-John will oversee. And I looked her up on IMDb, and she's been a writer and producer for a bunch of shows I haven't seen, but Empire was the one that was the most familiar to me. Okay. But that's all. I didn't write it down. They said Denis Villeneuve isn't directing the episodes, it sounds like, but they mentioned someone who's on board to direct the first 2 episodes, but I didn't write down who it was. But it sounds like it's it's going.
That could be really cool. I hope they do that justice.
And actually, also, the Dune Part 2, they said that they're going to start filming it, later this summer or this fall.
They haven't started yet?
Yeah.
God damn it!
They're waiting for Timothée Chalamet to go through puberty first. So. Just kidding. I love Timothée Chalamet.
They're filming it in the desert in Jordan, so they might not want to do it in the middle of the summer.
Yeah, that would suck.
I don't know, but it's on track apparently for a 2023 release.
That's what I saw. Yeah, not soon enough.
All right, cool. So why don't we start wrapping this up? So Andrea,
yes.
Final thoughts on Sci-Fi Channel Dune miniseries.
It was worse than I remember, but I had a lot of good laughs for 4 hours.
Like, who, if anyone, would you recommend watch this?
I think you would really only have to be a Dune fanatic, like we are. I think if you aren't a huge fan of the book and the story, this is going to turn you off big time. The only reason I stuck through it is because. Well, 1, because I had to, and 2, because I just love the story. And even if it's bad, like seeing somebody else's interpretation of the story is interesting.
Yeah. Matt, what do you think?
I had fun with this, but like Andrea, I think that if you are not familiar with the story and not a huge Dune fan, you probably will be disappointed with this. If you're if you love the books as a completist, I think you should definitely watch it. It's not a perfect adaptation, but there are parts of it that I enjoyed. I had a lot of fun with.
Yeah. I feel like this has pretty much been completely replaced by the Villeneuve movie. It's like now that exists, I don't know that there's much reason to watch this. I mean, I think that before that came out, you could say like, oh, if you don't have time to read the book, but you want to get a 5-hour Cliff Notes version of what happens in it. This does an okay job at that. But I feel like at this point, probably it's only for hardcore Dune fanatics and for people like writers, if you want to see different attempts at adapting this classic book and what the different approaches have been. But Raj, what do you think? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there was a part of me that was thinking like, oh man, it would be great to get somebody who is Dune naive and like get them to watch this first and see what they thought. But I couldn't do that to anyone because I wouldn't want this to be their first. I wouldn't want this to be their doorway into the Dune universe. So I would even say like, I'd rather people watch the Lynch movie just because, again, it's not about, to me, it's more about the feeling and the like energy that you're getting from it and just the interest in how they handle certain things. And this it's amazing because it is very faithful, but I think this is one of the examples of how being faithful to a book can be a trap, because what you end up with is, again, a box checking exercise and not a lot of life. And I feel like all of the great adaptations condense things smush things together, cut things out, and cover certain, like Lord of the Rings is widely regarded as an amazing adaptation, and they cut all kinds of shit. And there's always somebody who's like, Tom Bombadil. And it's like, but really, no, Tom Bombadil needed to go. Right. Like, and if you put him in a movie or a miniseries, people are going to be like, what the hell is this shit? So like, I feel like you have to make those choices. And this, I think this is an example of like being faithful, but like also being flat and not having a lot of heart or even just like energy. So I would not recommend this for anyone except like hardcore Dune historians.
Yeah. And I was thinking when you guys were talking, Matt, I don't know if you remember this, but a couple of years ago, we were at a dinner after KGB, and we started talking about the Lynch movie. Do you remember? And this is why I said to Dave, hey, we should do something on Dune, because you brought it up, and I was like, oh, Dune is the movie it's terrible. Like, it's a bad movie, but I will never not watch it if it's on. Like, it's
same.
a bad movie, but it's compellingly bad. Like, I always watch it. I always sit and watch it because it's a spectacle. This, I love Dune. I will not watch this again. Like, do you see the difference? Like, bad movie, but it's compellingly bad. Like, it compels me to watch. It is interesting. It's visually interesting. There's a lot going on. This is not something I would ever watch again willingly. And I'm a Dune fanatic,
Yeah. No, I mean, like I think you said and Raj said that, the Lynch version has this aesthetic to it. It has like a vision to it. Whereas this is sort of just like, let's check those boxes.
Yes.
And I
totally agree that the Lynch version is just compelling.
Yeah. I still don't think the Lynch version is bad personally, but I mean, I don't think it's a great movie, but I don't think it's bad. But yeah, I think we all agree on that aspect of it. So.
Yeah, and I'll just put in a good word again for Princess Irulan and Liet Kynes, that,
and Alia.
One of the few reasons, I guess I would say, I guess I would say, one of the few reasons to watch this is because those characters are either completely absent or sort of get short shrift in the Villeneuve version. So, if you want
to watch this for the Guild Agent hand gestures. That's
oh my God. That guy was like, I'm in this for 30 seconds. Like, I'm going to make this count.
I'm going to make it work.
Make it.
I actually stopped and rewound and watched it like twice because it was just so good.
But it did make me wonder, since Princess Irulan is going to appear in the part 2 of the Villeneuve adaptation, I wonder if you watch this and if it's going to influence that in any way. But I guess we'll see in 2023.
I
actually wasn't the.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I haven't read any interviews with Villeneuve, but has he said he's seen the Lynch version, and was he? I don't know. I was wondering if like he watched that Lynch version or even this one, and it was.
Oh, I can't. I don't know. I can't imagine he didn't, but I don't remember.
I'm sure he did. But the writer director of this, John Harrison, according to Wikipedia, he's an executive producer on Dune 2021.
Oh, huh. Interesting.
Dune 20.
Yeah.
So,
the Villeneuve movie.
The Villeneuve movie, yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So even if we're not crazy about this one, we did get the awesome Dune 2021 adaptation, and I'm sure if he's an executive producer, he probably contributed a lot to that.
Yeah. Or nothing.
I mean, like, again,
he just got a paycheck.
It's a weird little game, those executive producer credits on films.
I mean, if his production company had a piece of Dune, then they would have to add him as a thing. So like it's you never know.
I guess we'll probably never know. But we should wrap things up there. But maybe someday we'll come back and talk about Children of Dune. And I'll see you all in 2023 for Dune Part 2.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All
right. So let's wrap things up there. So we've been speaking with Andrea Kale, Matthew Kressel, and Rajan Khanna. So thanks everyone so much for joining us.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
And that was our panel. So big thanks again to Andrea Kale, Matthew Kressel, and Rajan Khanna for joining us on the show. This episode of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy was made possible thanks to support from listeners like you. So if you enjoy the show and want it to continue, please support us on Patreon over at patreon.com/geeks or via PayPal over at geeksguideshow.com/crowdfunding. Alright, so that was our show. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is a production of Wired.com. For more information about the show, visit geeksguideshow.com. To learn more about your host, visit davidbarrkirtley.com. Music and voiceover produced by yours truly, Jack Kincaid. If you enjoyed this program, tell your friends. If you didn't enjoy it, tell no one. Thank you for listening.